Hi guys, it's Dr. Ray Heinisch, natural pharmacist with illnessisoptional.com. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to protect ourselves against the sun. Now, we're going to get into a discussion about sunscreen, but we're going to take it one notch higher than that. Okay, and I'm going to draw all kinds of beautiful little illustrations for you so you understand the difference between UVB and UVA radiation and how they impact our skin, okay? So let's start with a discussion about UVB radiation. In order to understand that, I have to draw you an image of the skin, okay? This is the skin, all right? We've got a number of layers to the skin, but we're going to talk about the superficial layers versus the deeper layers. UVB radiation is a form of sun radiation that only penetrates into the outer layers of the skin. This is what's responsible for the sunburn that we get, okay? The problem with this type of UV radiation is it does damage the DNA. It does damage the DNA, but it only damages the outer layers of the skin. So what does that result in? Well, if we damage the outer layers of the cells of the outer layers of the skin, we ultimately increase our risk of basal cell cancer and squamous cell cancer. Okay? These are the most common forms of cancer, of skin cancer, but they're the least damaging. Now, it's not to say that we can ignore them, because they can be very scarring to people. They are painful to get rid of, and they can occasionally lead to malignancy and even death. So they are serious cancers to deal with and protect yourself against, but they're not the most serious or life-threatening, which is, of course, melanoma. So that's UVB radiation. Now, what's interesting about UVB radiation is that this is the radiation that sunscreen has blocked or protected us against on some level. That is what the SPF is talking about when it says it protects you from the sun. The SPF, if it says an SPF of 30 or 15 or 50 or 70, it means it's protecting you from the UVB rays, not necessarily the UVA rays. Okay, so now we're moving on to the UVA rays. Now let me go ahead and draw our skin again. My art teacher would be so proud. Okay, so this is the skin. Now the UVA radiation penetrates much deeper into the deeper layers of the skin. Now why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because within that layer of the skin, you'll find what are called melanocytes. These are the cells that produce melanin, which is what gives our skin and our hair its color. So that's a problem because those are the cells that ultimately become melanoma. All right, and melanoma is the serious form of skin cancer. Well, they're all serious, but this is the most serious because it is life-threatening. And so we want to protect not just against the UVB radiation, but also against the UVA radiation. Now, incidentally, beyond just the melanoma, this is also the one that causes premature skin aging to a much higher degree than the UVB radiation. It also damages the immune system within the skin as well. So when we ultimately cause skin aging and immune damage, that really sets the stage for the melanoma, which is, again, the serious form of skin cancer. All right. Now, the problem is most sunscreens, especially when I was growing up and you were growing up, did not block UVA radiation to a great extent. Only in recent years have you started to see blocks both UVB and UVA radiation. Now, the new FDA guidelines are going to require the manufacturers of these sunscreens to, if they're going to say that it's broad spectrum or protects against skin aging or skin cancer, it has to protect against UVA radiation. So that's an important point. Whenever you buy a sunscreen, and we'll get to these tips later on in the discussion, but whenever you buy a sunscreen, you want to make sure it does block against UVA and UVB radiation in order to protect not just against basal cell and squamous cell carcinoma, but also against melanoma, premature aging, and immune damage within the skin. Now, incidentally, UVA radiation isn't the one that causes the sunburn, but it does cause the suntan. So if you are getting a suntan, that means the UVA radiation is getting into the deeper layers of the skin. Okay, so before we get into some of the juicy stuff, some of the stuff you've probably not heard before, I do feel obligated to go through some of the stuff you probably already have heard, at least on some level. All right, so let me just quickly run through this. It'll only take me but 15, 20 seconds, okay? First, you want to avoid peak sun hours, all right? Avoid peak sun hours. Now, those are the sun hours where the sun is brightest and hottest, okay? So that should be your guiding principle. If the sun is really hot and really bright, just try not to go out for too long during that time. Wait until the sun is beginning to cool down a bit for you. All right, number 2, apply every 1 to 2 hours. I don't care what the sunscreen bottle says. You apply every 1 to 2 hours. Number 3, apply after swimming and sweating. Okay? Apply after swimming and sweating. So if you go for a jog, for example, then assume that some of that sunscreen or the majority of that sunscreen has gone. If you've come out of the ocean or out of the swimming pool, apply sunscreen just to be safe. Number 4, use a shot glass amount. You want to use a full ounce of sunscreen to protect the skin. So that's about a shot glass amount. I've also heard it described as a golf ball size. That is a lot more than most people use on a regular basis. Now, if you're using the spray sunscreen, it's hard to gauge how much you're using. So just make sure you lather it on pretty thick. Number 5, apply at least 15 minutes before you go out to the sun, okay? That's where I think a lot of people go wrong. They apply it after they get out to the beach, and you're missing a significant amount of protection that way. In addition, by then you're usually already sweating, so it's not going to absorb into the skin very readily. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into some advanced Jedi sun protection tips, okay? The first one is one I've already said 1,000 times already, but I'm going to say it one last time. Make sure your sunscreen blocks both UVA and UVB radiation, okay? I can't stress that one enough. Number 2, and this one is a big one because most people do the opposite. All right, for example, people go out and they buy suntan oils or they buy sunscreens with oils. We want to make sure that our sunscreens have no oils. Why is that important? Because when we apply oil to the skin, it gets absorbed into the deeper layers. And when it gets in there, and this UVB radiation or UVA radiation or both get in there, they damage the oil. Much like oils left in the sun, they become rancid and oxidized. And that causes more DNA damage. All right? And we want to avoid that. So your sunscreen should have no oils. Number 3, it must contain antioxidants. We want a sunscreen that contains antioxidants. Why? Because that provides additional protection from sun damage. Sunscreens with antioxidants have a tendency to decrease the inflammation in the skin. They may act to protect the DNA from damage. And that's just an added layer of protection. So make sure it has antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E, and other antioxidants. Number 4, it should contain botanicals. This, I think, is a big one. Now, for me, it's a must, but I want to make sure that at least we follow these 3. These are absolute musts. For many, the botanicals are going to be a little bit harder to find in your sunscreens. So I'm not going to make it a must, but I think you should. Here's why. Botanicals such as milk thistle, turmeric, rosemary, silymarin, which is milk thistle, and green tea all work to not just act as antioxidants to the skin. They have been shown to prevent inflammation. Inflammation is what ultimately produces sunburn, but that inflammation also triggers more DNA damage. So we want to protect against free radicals, which is what the antioxidants do. We want to avoid inflammation or decrease inflammation because that further damages DNA and causes symptoms like sunburn. Third, it's been shown to protect the DNA from damage. It acts as a layer against, a defense layer against the UVB and UVA damage to the cell. Number 4, it's been shown to repair damage. The botanicals like turmeric, green tea, rosemary, silymarin, or milk thistle all work to protect and repair DNA damage after the damage has been done. And then finally, most of those herbs have anti-cancer qualities. Green tea and turmeric, for example, are two of the most powerful anti-cancer herbs on the market. We normally take them in supplement form and in our food, but we can also apply them topically, and the research is showing that they do penetrate and they do protect when they are applied to the skin. So I love the botanicals. I think they should be in everything, in all sunscreens, but if you can find one with the botanicals, and I'll give you a recommendation here in a second, then do so. All right, and as a matter of fact, why don't I tell you which one that is now? This is the sunscreen that I use myself. Life Extension Foundation is a company that puts out a lot of really good information about health, wellness, and they put out a fantastic sunscreen. It's called Total Sun Protection with beta-glucan and photo aging recovery complex. Now, aside from blocking both UVA and UVB radiation, it also has the antioxidants. It's got the botanicals. It's got the green tea. It's got milk thistle. It's got rosemary. It's got licorice, which is another one. It's got aloe vera built directly into it, which helps to soothe and protect the skin as well and repair damage. So this is my favorite sunscreen to use. Now, it's a little bit on the pricey side, so let me tell you how I recommend using it and how I recommend it myself. The Total Sun Protection is meant, I use it as a first layer. So before we go out to the sun, we apply the sunscreen 15 minutes before. This is the one that I apply 15 minutes before I go out to the sun. And then I use a spray sunscreen. It can be a conventional sunscreen. They also make a sunscreen with antioxidants in a spray form. It's a lot less expensive. So that acts as a secondary barrier. That's what I spray on every 1 to 2 hours to help protect. Now, why do I apply this one first? Because the herbs and the botanicals and the antioxidants that are in this penetrate into the skin, and they probably stay there for a lot longer than the sunscreens that are applied to the outer layers. So I apply this first, and then I continue to protect by spraying on some sort of other sunscreen that contains antioxidants. That way you end up getting the best of the protection, and you can save money at the same time. Okay, so this is called Total Sun Protection. The other one is sun protection spray. That's made by Life Extension as well, but you can also use one of the more conventional sunscreens that you can buy at the local pharmacy, provided it meets these 3 requirements. Okay, the fourth one is to take a supplement, and this is a fairly unique supplement, and most people don't even know it exists, and it is extremely powerful for protecting the skin from UV radiation damage from the inside out. So the sunscreens work by protecting the outer layer and preventing the UV radiation from getting in there. But it's not 100% protective. Some UV radiation does get into the skin, both the outer and the inner layers. This product, it's called Fern Block. Again, it's put out by the same company that puts out the sunscreen. Fern Block by Life Extension Foundation helps to protect the skin from the inside out. Besides just acting as a UV barrier, it also seems to protect the immune cells, which keep the bad cells from growing. It also acts to repair DNA damage. So you simply take 1 per day during any time that you know you're going to have sun exposure. And I will usually double up, take 2 per day on days when I'm going out for a significant sun exposure. But 1 per day, perhaps during the spring and summer months, just to act as a protective barrier, because keep in mind, a lot of sun exposure happens in the shade. It happens just from your everyday walking out to the car to go to work, hanging out in the car. The windshields protect you against UVB radiation, but the UVA goes right through the windshields into your skin. So the Fern Block may help to prevent or mitigate some of that damage. And it's very easy to take, 1 per day generally, and 2 per day on days when you're going to get a lot of sun exposure. And it starts to work right away. Even after 1 dose, the research suggests that it gets in there, gets deposited into the skin, and acts as a barrier against UV radiation. So the product's called Fern Block. Again, the sunscreen I recommend is called Total Sun Protection by Life Extension Foundation. And this pretty much covers you. So I hope you learned a ton. Sign up for our free newsletter below, and we'll see you at the next video.